I am speaking today with my friend Maestro Stanley Sperber, one of Israel's preeminent conductors. Stanley served as music director of the Haifa Symphony Orchestra from 1985 to 2000. He has also guest conducted orchestras around the world, including all of Israel's major orchestras. A prominent expert in choral music and conducting, Stanley Sperber has served as the music director of the Tel Aviv Philharmonic Choir, the Israel National Choir, Rinat, and the Jerusalem Academy Chamber Choir. A native of New York and a graduate of the Juilliard School of Music, Stanley immigrated to Israel in 1972. He is also an internationally certified tennis chair umpire and has represented Israel in major competitions, including the Davis Cup and the U.S. Open. And Maestro Sperber was also the founding conductor of the Zamir Chorale in New York in 1960, an elite ensemble specializing in musics from Jewish traditions. And on a personal note, he is my mentor who encouraged me to start the Zamir Chorale of Boston in 1969. Welcome, Stanley. Good to be talking to you.
Great. It's great to see you, Josh, and to be talking to you.
So, Stanley, let's talk about when you started the Zamir Chorale. What inspired you? What were your goals? Was it a Zionistic thing?
Well, no, not exactly. I was a graduate of the Mossad camps in Pennsylvania, where so many of us young people from the East Coast went. And we had a counsel's choir there that was conducted by Yonatan Zak, international pianist who unfortunately passed away a year or so ago. And we had such a great time with him. We decided when we got back to New York that we would continue singing. And even though we were all quite young, I was in fact just 18 years old, I had a little more experience than them. And we were just about 12 people. And so I started waving my hands in front of them. And sure enough, as the time went by, it turned out that there was a need for young Jewish students to express themselves culturally in Jewish things. And so we established this choir and sang exclusively in Hebrew. And then, of course, a few years later, I met my buddy Josh Jacobson and encouraged him to do the same in Boston. And to my great happy joy, he did so successfully to this very day. And of course, you'd have been congratulated for that, Josh.
Thank you. And a similar experience when I came out of the Camp Yavna, where you were the music counselor and you started the choir, and a bunch of us went back to Boston and decided to do the same thing. Repertoire. Where did you find repertoire and what kind of music was it?
Well, what happened was that a couple of years earlier, or around the same time, actually, I visited Israel as a tourist. And since I had conducted in the Zimriya, Israel's International Choral Festival in '67, I got to know Gary Bertini, who was the director of the Rinat Choir, and he invited me to a Rinat rehearsal and even invited me to conduct Rossi's Hallelujah there as a kid. And I met Gil Aldema, the famous Israeli arranger and composer, actually. And I started to get my music from Rinat. And in subsequent visits to Israel, I picked up as much material as I could. And there you go. I mean, then I started to get to know repertoire that was written worldwide in Hebrew. I was involved in the initial publishing of the complete works of Solomon Rossi, who you know so well and who you performed very much. And so I performed a good deal of Solomon Rossi with the Zamir Chorale. And also I got to know works like the Sacred Service by Ernst Bloch And so gradually, we compiled a rather large amount of Hebrew repertoire, which kept growing all the time with my visits to Israel.
So, but let's go back to 1960 when you first started the choir. I mean, what kind of repertoire? And I know there were a number of pieces that were classical repertoire that were retexted into Hebrew.
And so the repertoire in the beginning was 2 and 3 part stuff because, I mean, we were just in the beginning stages. And in fact, I think our first concert was at Brandeis University, where we sang a concert commemorating Israel Independence Day. In the concert, we were we were invited to sing some songs at a small amphitheater outdoors, and we did so, and it was a rather small stage, and I had the choir on stage, and I had to back up a little bit so I wouldn't be on top of them, and I had my feet more than halfway on stage, but the heels of my shoes were off the stage, but I was balanced okay. But I heard a woman in the first row, an elderly woman, said, "He's going to fall off the stage." She said it quietly, and then she said it più forte, and then she couldn't handle it anymore, and she got up and ran up to the stage and grabbed me around my knees and asked for help. And so she stopped the concert. And when we continued after the concert, a man came over to me and introduced himself as a professor at Brandeis in the music department. And he said to me that he liked the chorus, but he wanted to ask me a question. Why was I conducting with my left hand in my pocket? So I told him I really had no experience conducting, and it was then actually I decided that the time had come to begin studying.
How about some other memorable concerts? I know you took the choir to Israel in 1967, and that was rather memorable in many ways. It was right after the war.
It was, because what happened was that about a few months before that, I was conducting a rehearsal in the Jewish Theological Seminary where we worked at 122nd Street and Broadway. And I saw an elderly man walk into the room and sit in a chair in the back. And in the intermission, he came over to me and said, "My name is Aaron Sfipropis, and I am the director of the Zimriya. I would like you to bring the choir to Israel in '67 to represent the United States in the Zimriya." And we got very excited. We got together the money for the flight because they paid the expenses in Israel, but the flight was covered by us. And we took around 30 singers or so to Israel. But 1 week or two before the flight, the Six-Day War broke out. And
Unlike this war, it was much shorter, though.
it was a little shorter by about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And when the war broke out and everyone was actually getting ready for the trip, the singers were calling me and saying to me, "What's new with the war?" As if I was a member of the army. And so I would tell them that I sent a few tanks up north to Syria, and I had a couple of planes down south, but stop asking me what's going on with the war. And then I called Aaron Sfipropis, and he told me the war is over. I said, "Is the Zimriya going to take place?" He said, "Sure." And so it was amazing. We flew over there, and we landed just a few weeks after the end of the war. And the choir wound up singing the first concert ever at the Wailing Wall while they were still actually clearing the area in front of the wall. And then we sang the first concert ever at Har Sofim, Mount Scopus, in the background, they were blowing up mines. And so it was an unbelievably exciting trip. And if that weren't enough, on the bus ride from the airport to our hostel where we stayed, and a soldier asked, a woman soldier asked us to give her a lift to Tel Aviv. And on the way to Tel Aviv, she taught us Yerushalayim Shel Zahav.
Whoa.
Yeah, and we sang it already in a concert 2 nights later, the beginning in unison, and then we did some improvised harmonies of it. And so the trip was unbelievably dramatic for us and resulted in quite a few people making Aliyah. To my chagrin, two of them didn't come back with us. One of them joined the army, and one of them got engaged to a paratrooper. And I asked them, "Did you tell your family about this?" They told me yes. Nonetheless, when we landed at Kennedy Airport, their parents were there, and they said to me, "Where's my kid?" And I said, "Well, didn't they call you?" They said, "Yes, they called, but I didn't agree that they didn't come home." I said, "Well, they told me they did." I said, "We want our child back." I said, "I'm sorry, I can't do anything. One is engaged, and the other one's in the army." And then when we went back in 1970, I had to have every one of the singers sign have their parents sign that I was not responsible to bring them home.
So you started the choir in 1960. You called it Zamir. Were you aware that there had been earlier Hazamir choirs in Europe?
Well, to be honest, Josh, the
century?
name of the choir in the beginning was the Mossad Choral Group. Since, as I told you, we started in Camp Mossad.
Yeah.
And then the director of the camp, Shlomo Schulzinger, of blessed memory, contacted me and said, "You may not use the name Mossad anymore in case somebody gets injured on the way to rehearsal. I might get sued." So I started looking for a name, and Moshe Avital, who was one of the counselors, and he became a director, a camp director. Wasn't he our director in Yavne, Josh?
Yes, he was. Yes.
Okay. He suggested the name Zamir, and it was a beautiful word because it was a play on the word Lizamer, to sing, and also it was, of course, the word means nightingale. And so we immediately established it. I did not know at the time that the original Zamir Chorale was established in Lodz, and actually you were the expert who did the historical investigation about it. But I will tell you that I think it's also in the book, but it's quite interesting that in the very first concert we gave in Israel, an elderly woman came over to me and said, "You established the Zamir Chorale in New York. I sang in the Zamir Chorale in Lodz, in Warsaw." And she said to me, "You got to come to my house. I want to show you something." I said, "No problem." And she said, "No, you're coming right now." After the concert, I came to her house. She showed me a newspaper clipping with her and her husband singing in the choir, and the conductor's name was Baruch Sperber. And she was a bit shocked and freaked, and so was I, since Baruch Sperber was murdered by the Nazis in the same year that I was born. And she was convinced that I was what's the word?
Incarnation.
Reincarnation.
Yeah. Twilight Zone.
As Sale Mabel Barber said, of Baruch Sperber. And I mean, it's an unbelievable story that I had the honor of continuing his original choir in Lodz without even knowing about it.